Book of Heaven Volume 2, Call of the Creature to the Order, the Place and the Purpose for which he was created by God, by the servant of God Luisa Piccarreta. Page 28-34. May 9, 1899, Threat of Chastisements. Jesus gives his bitter breath to Luisa. This morning I was in a sea of affliction because of the loss of Jesus. After much hardship, Jesus came and drew so close to me that I could not even see him. He reached the point of placing his forehead upon mine, of leaning his face on mine, and so with all the other members. Now, while Jesus was in this position, I said to him, "My adorable Jesus, you don't love me anymore." And he, "If I did not love you, I would not be so close to you." And I added, "How can you say that you love me if you no longer let me suffer as before? I'm afraid you don't want me to be in this state anymore. At least, free me also from the bother of the confessor." While I was saying this, it seemed that Jesus would not pay attention to my words, but rather, he made me see a multitude of people who were committing every kind of evil. Indignant with them, Jesus would make different kinds of contagious diseases swoop down into their midst, and many would die black as charcoal. It seemed that Jesus would exterminate that multitude of people from the face of the earth. While seeing this, I prayed Jesus to pour his bitternesses into me, so as to spare the people, but he would not pay attention to me in this either, and replying to the words I had said before, he added, "The greatest chastisement I can give you, the priest, and the people, is to free you from this state of suffering. My justice would pour out in all of its fury, because it would find no opposition." This is so true, that the worst evil for someone is to be given an office and then to be removed from it. It would be better for him had he not been admitted to that office, since, by abusing it and not profiting from it, he has rendered himself unworthy of it. Then Jesus continued to come quite a few times today, but so afflicted as to move one to pity and to tears, maybe even the stones. I tried to console him as much as I could. Now I would embrace him, now I would sustain his head which was in great pain, now I would say to him, "Heart of my heart, Jesus, it has never been your usual way to appear so afflicted to me. If other times you made yourself seen afflicted, by pouring it into me, you would immediately change appearance, but now I am being denied the opportunity to give you this relief. Who would have thought, after you have consented to pour and to share your sufferings with me for so long, and you yourself did so much to dispose me, that now I would have to be deprived of it? Suffering for love of you was my only relief. It was suffering that made me bear my exile from heaven. But now, being deprived of it, I feel I have no place on which to lean anymore, and life becomes tedious to me. Oh please! O holy spouse, beloved good, my dear life, oh please, let the pains come back to me, give me suffering. Do not look at my unworthiness and at my grave sins, but at your mercy, which has not exhausted itself. While I was pouring myself out with Jesus, he drew closer to me and told me, "My daughter, it is my justice that wants to pour itself out over the creatures. The number of sins in men is almost complete, and justice wants to come out, to make pomp of its fury, and to find reparation for the injustices of men. Look, to show you how embittered I am and to content you a little bit, I want to pour only my breath into you." And so, drawing his lips near mine, he sent me his breath, which was so bitter that I felt my mouth, my heart and my whole person being intoxicated. If his mere breath was so bitter, what must be the rest of Jesus? He left me with such pain, that I felt my heart pierced through. May 12, 1899, Jesus makes her content, pouring sweetnesses and bitternesses from his side. This morning, continuing to make himself seen afflicted, my adorable Jesus transported me outside of myself, and showed me the various offenses he was receiving. I began to pray again that He would pour His bitternesses into me. At the beginning, Jesus did not pay attention to me, and He just told me, "My daughter, only then is charity perfect when it is done for the sole purpose of pleasing me, and only then is it called true charity and is it recognized by me, when it is stripped of everything." Taking the occasion from His very words, I said to Him, "Jesus, my dear, it is precisely for this that I want you to pour your bitternesses into me, to be able to relieve you from so many pains, and if I pray you also to spare the creatures, it is because I remember well that on other occasions, after you had chastised the creatures, in seeing them suffer so much from poverty and other things, you too suffered very much. On the other hand, when I have been attentive and I have prayed you and importuned you to the point of tiring you, so much so that you were pleased to pour it into me, sparing them, afterwards you have been very content about it. Don't you remember? Besides, are they not your images?" Seeing himself persuaded, Jesus told me, "Because of you, it is necessary to make you content. Draw near me and drink from my side." So I did. I drew near Him to drink from His side, but instead of bitterness, I suckled a most sweet blood, which inebriated all of me with love and with sweetness. Yes, I was content, but this was not my intention, so, turning to Him, I said, "My dear good, what are you doing? What comes out is not bitter, but sweet. Oh, please, I pray you, pour your own bitternesses into me." And Jesus, looking at me benignly, told me, "Keep drinking, for the bitter will come afterwards." So, I attached myself to His side again, and after the sweet kept coming for a while, the bitter also came. But who can say the intensity of the bitterness? After I was satiated from drinking, I got up, and looking at His head which had the crown of thorns, I removed it and I drove it onto my head. Jesus seemed to be all compliant, while other times He had not permitted this. How beautiful it was to see Jesus after He had poured His bitternesses. He seemed almost disarmed, without strength, but all meek, like a humble little lamb, all compliant. I realized that it was very late, but since the confessor had come early in the morning to call me to obedience, it wasn't that I knew that I was to be called by obedience, for at the obedience Jesus leaves me free. So, turning to Him, I said, "Most sweet Jesus, do not allow that I cause trouble to my family and bother to the confessor by having him come again, oh please. I beg you, you yourself, let me return into myself." Jesus told me, "My daughter, today I do not want to leave you. And I too do not have the heart to leave you, but, just for a little while, to let my family see that I am inside myself, and then we will return to be together." So, after a long differing, saying goodbye to each other, He left me for a little while. It was precisely lunchtime, and my family was just coming to call me. But even though I felt I was inside myself, I felt all full of suffering, my head would not hold up. That bitter and that sweet which I had drunk from the side of Jesus gave me such satiety and suffering together, that it was impossible for me to take anything else. The word I had given to Jesus kept me on tenterhooks, so, with the pretext that my head was aching, I said to my family, "Let me be alone, for I don't want anything." So I was left free again, and immediately I began to call my sweet Jesus, and He, always benign, came back. But who can say what happened to me today? How many graces Jesus gave to my soul, how many things He made me understand. It is impossible to express it with words. Then, after staying for a long time, in order to calm my sufferings, Jesus poured sweet milk from His mouth, and then, around evening, He left me, giving me His word that He would come back soon. And so I found myself inside myself again, but a little bit more free of sufferings. May 16, 1899, The Virtue of the Cross. stripping oneself of one's own will. Jesus continued for a few more days to manifest himself in the same way, not wanting to detach himself from me. It seemed that little bit of sufferings he had poured into me attracted him so much, that he could not be without me. This morning he poured a little bit more of bitterness from his mouth into mine, and then he told me, the cross disposes the soul to patience. The cross opens heaven, and unites heaven and earth together, that is, God and the soul. The virtue of the cross is powerful, and when it enters into a soul, it has the virtue of removing the rust of all earthly things. Not only this, but it causes her boredom, bother and contempt for the things of the earth, giving her, instead, the flavor and the enjoyment of celestial things. However, few are those who recognize the virtue of the cross, therefore they despise it. Who can say how many things I understood about the cross while Jesus was speaking? The speaking of Jesus is not like ours, in which one understands only as much as is said. Rather, one single word leaves an immense light, and to ruminate well on it one could remain occupied the whole day in most profound meditation. Therefore, if I wanted to tell everything I would be too long, and I would also lack the time to do it. After a little while, Jesus came back again, but a little more afflicted. I immediately asked the reason for it, and Jesus showed me many devout souls, and told me, "My daughter, what I look at in the soul is when she strips herself of her will. Only then does my will invest her, divinize her, and make her all mine. Take a look at these souls who call themselves devout. As long as things go their way. But then, one little thing, if their confessions are not long enough, if the confessor does not satisfy them, is enough for them to lose peace, and some reach the point of no longer wanting to do anything. This says that it is not my will that predominates in them, but their own. Believe, O my daughter, that they have taken the wrong way, because when I see that they really want to love me, I have many ways to give my grace." How pitiful it was to see Jesus suffer for this kind of people. I tried to compassionate him as much as I could, and so it ended. May 19, 1899. Humility is the safeguard of the celestial favors. This morning I felt a fear within me that it might not be Jesus, but the devil, who wanted to deceive me. Jesus came, and seeing me with this fear, he said to me, "Humility is the safeguard of the celestial favors." Humility clothes the soul with such safety that the tricks of the devil cannot penetrate into her. Humility places all celestial graces in safety, so much so, that when I see humility, I let flow, abundantly, all kinds of celestial favors. Therefore, do not want to disturb yourself for this, but rather, with a simple eye, look always into your interior, to see whether you are invested with beautiful humility, and do not worry about all the rest. Then he showed me many religious people and, among them, priests, even of holy life. But as good as they were, they lacked that spirit of simplicity in believing in the many graces and the many ways the Lord uses with souls. Jesus said to me, "I communicate myself both to the humble and to the simple, because they immediately believe in my graces and take them into great consideration, though they may be ignorant and poor. But with these others you see, I am very reluctant, because the first step which draws the soul near me is belief, and it happens that these, with all of their science and doctrine, and even holiness, never come to experience a ray of celestial light, that is, they walk along the natural way, and they never arrive at touching, even slightly, that which is supernatural. This is also the reason for which in the course of my mortal life there was not one learned, one priest, one man of power, among my followers, but all ignorant and of low condition, because these were more humble and simple, and also more disposed to make great sacrifices for me.